Welcome to the Become a Writer Today podcast with Brian Collins. Here you'll find practical advice and interviews for all kinds of writers.
Would you like to sell more of your nonfiction books on Amazon? Hi there, this is Brian Collins and welcome to the Become a Writer Today podcast. This week I spoke to Alex Newton of K-Lytics. And K-Lytics is an interesting company in that it shows you how to optimize your book so it sells more on Amazon. And you can also use K-Lytics to figure out what type of books, and particularly non-fiction books, you should be writing. Now, Alex began a career in the corporate world before leaving to set up his own business, which helps self-published authors. And I started by asking Alex why he set up K-Lytics in the first place.
Well, when I first started, there was a very, very selfish reason. I spent, 20 years in corporate life. My traveling around the world, working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, sort of. It felt like this. And my little daughter was born, right? She was by then 3 years old. And I really, looked at myself, said, look, there has to be another way, apart from the corporate life. Is there any way of earning money from home? And at the time, obviously, there were the big buzzwords like passive income and all these sort of things. And where I find, by the way, passive income is a big misnomer. What I now have is active income, but it's earned from home by hard work. And that's when I sort of started figuring out, okay, there has to be a way online. How did I get into the publishing side of things? Well, my career, before I went into top management consulting, I did spend time in publishing. And then it was right at the time was like the big Kindle gold rush time. I think today is the 20th anniversary of Google and we have 11 years of Kindle. And, back then when Kindle was like 3-4 years old, there was a big gold rush type of feeling. So I looked at the time into Amazon and, earning money online. And so, well, first I thought, let's go into publishing myself. But I was a very fact-based person. I started looking at book pages. I started looking at Amazon sales ranks, at genres, fiction, nonfiction, and started figuring out if you start looking at the data in a smart way, you can tell exactly what's trending, what's, going up, what is selling, and what is not crowded as a space yet. And that's when came to things, first report about 30 main genres on Kindle. And I gave it to a couple of authors and said, hey, cool, can you do this on subcategories, right? And I said, yes. And then it progressed. And that's how K-Lytics was born. Basically, it stands for K is Kindle and Lytics is for analytics. So that's how it was born. K-Lytics, market intelligence for authors and publishers.
And I've used some of your reports to change how I position my books, my nonfiction books on Amazon. How do you think it can help writers sell more books in a way that they might not necessarily be able to do by themselves?
Well, there is 2 stages to the use of the data that or like the strategic angle that you basically look at the book market with all its like 5,000 genres that you have on Kindle and take a look at, well, what is actually selling and what space is not overly crowded. So where is there still a favorable ratio of demand versus supply and where can you still earn some money? Now, that angle is not to mean that you should bend yourself. I never recommend there's these buzzwords out there like right to market and these sort of things. And I say, look, don't bend yourself. If you write nonfiction, you usually write for authority, to prove authority, and ideally also to make money on the side, right? So when you do that, you still have to write something where you're really knowledgeable because there are so many, say junk books out there in the book market of want-to-be experts. Yeah. So the first angle is select a market where I'd never say success is guaranteed. That's impossible. But my philosophy is show me those book markets and book market niches where the odds of success are substantially higher than in other parts of the book market. So how do you sell more books? First stage is strategic. You select a book market where the odds of success are overproportionally high. The second part to the equation is either you already have a book or once the book is there, it gets very tactical. And that tactical end of it is Amazon offers you to put your book into various categories, and the categories offer you visibility, and categories play together with keywords. So that becomes a very technical subject. But basically, the categories are part of the metadata of a book and help discoverability to your readers that browse the site or search the site. And there, knowing which categories to put the book in can also help increase like the technical odds of success.
So looking at your reports, one thing that struck me, this is probably something I've noticed on the Amazon store as well, is that romance books, thriller books, and so on sell vastly more than a typical nonfiction book.
Yes, that is true. And I think there is reasons to that. First thing is, when Kindle was born as a device, if you look at who typically purchased a Kindle, now I don't have exact data on the demographics of Kindle owners, only Amazon has. But when the market evolved, it was the perfect present that you give your mom for Christmas. And when I got on the plane, it always seemed to me the typical Kindle reader is whatever, female between 40 and 60 years old. If you're a young guy now, no offense taken, if you also own a Kindle. But the fact is, right now, the number one genre on Kindle is romance. Then you have mystery, thriller, suspense. Then you have sci-fi, fantasy. Then you have teen, young, adult. Then you start getting into like self-help, business and money, business and investing, these sort of titles. But you're completely right. The bulk of the sales, the volume is driven by romance. And my hypothesis is apart from the fact that also in the print business, these are these are major book markets, especially mystery, thriller, suspense. The demographics behind the typical Kindle owner or device owner or e-reader is probably in a way that you have naturally a high demand for romance books.
So what's the nonfiction writer supposed to do?
Well, a nonfiction writer has a couple of avenues to take here. First of all, saying that romance and mystery, thriller, suspense, sci-fi is the bulk of the market does not say you cannot be successful in nonfiction. So take business and money or take self-help. Also there, you still have trending and attractive niches. I mean, we've seen things like, personal transformation, certain self-help niches still trending up. Now, the one thing you have to consider though is ebook is not the only avenue to success. And we had a analysis of all the bestseller lists on Kindle as to what is the format penetration of the overall bestseller lists, what is ebook driven, what is hardcover, what's paperback driven. Now, whilst the first genres I mentioned, romance, MTS, and sci-fi, they have all a ebook penetration of like 90%, 70 to 90%. When it comes to business books, for example, we measured like 24% ebooks. Then in business book, it's another 27% hardcover, another 17% or so was paperback. And then you have actually also by now quite a reasonable share, almost 30% of the bestsellers being audio, right? And if you look at self-help, the picture is even more extreme. Although the book market supply is completely swamped in the ebook and the Kindle world, when it comes to the demand side, also here, print is still a very important channel. So as a nonfiction author, the data can be very, very helpful still on the ebook market to gauge what's trending up, what's trending down, what's working. But when it comes to the distribution, my first advice would be also look into print and also look into audio, especially if you're into business books. And the next step is, what are you actually writing for as a nonfiction author? Do you write to earn money with a book, or do you write to showcase and prove authority so that but you earn your money elsewhere? And I don't want to generalize or overgeneralize, but I think in many, many book market niches, take, for example, even if you go away from business and money, there are very obscure, very tiny niches in the ebook market. Crafts, hobbies, and home. My famous example is how to grow bonsai. You type bonsai into Amazon, immediately turns up a book with a number one bestseller badge. And that number one bestseller badge is not overall in the store, but it applies to the category the book is in. In that case, it is gardening and horticulture, growing bonsais or something, right?
Yeah.
And that book is the number one bestseller. It immediately jumps into your eyes the minute you type in that keyword into the search bar. If you then look at the real store-wide sales rank of the book, it's around 50,000, 60,000. So 2 to 3 copies a day. So the author is never going to get rich with the books. But if that person, has a gardening company or a bonsai online shop, it's a completely different matter. So my other big piece of advice to a nonfiction author would be use the book to prove authority, but use then that authority to monetize other channels, whether it is your coaching business, whether it is your consulting business, whether it's your other online product, information product, you name it. That would be my piece of advice for nonfiction authors.
Yeah, exactly. Like creating an online course. And I suppose that brings me to something I'm interested in. If you're a nonfiction writer or if you're somebody running a business, you got to spend all your time or a certain amount of your time writing and creating. So how do you go about balancing that with the time you might need to run a coaching practice, for example, or, create an information product like an online course?
Right. Now, especially the nonfiction side of the business, I think renders itself to a large degree to outsourcing. So, even if you look at the big nonfiction business books that you see in the airports, hardly anybody of these people wrote the book, him or herself, right? They may have had the idea, they may have had the outline, they even may have used, dictated their thoughts while doing a walk in the park and structured the book. But then they will have hired a ghostwriter. So especially in nonfiction, I think you have to look into outsourcing part of the journey. And if you say no, outsourcing the actual writing so that you have more time for the marketing or your coaching business is not your thing. You say, I'm owning the content. I want to write. Then that's a perfectly fine decision too. But then you have to free up or higher capacity to help you then with the other parts of the business, which are exactly who's maintaining the website, who's taking care of the information products, who's taking care of the book marketing side of the business. In a long story short, and I also learned it the hard way myself, the day has only 24 hours a day, and you don't want to spend 24 hours a day neither writing nor working and doing the publishing side of your business. So you have to find helping hands to scale the business. Otherwise, the whole thing is not set up for success.
So what tips, based on your own experience, would you give somebody who wants to try outsourcing for the first time?
When I personally took the outsourcing journey, first of all, first piece of research is, what are my sources of potential freelancers? And, the second you Google outsourcing, freelance productivity enhancement, obviously you're pointed to the big platforms, starting from Upwork, to the low-end providers such as Fiverr.com, you name them. And obviously there are many niche-based ones in between. Take Design 99 Designs for designs and all these sorts of things. The sources are known. What I can suggest, though, is 2 things that many people don't tell you. The one is, because you also at the start look at price, you are probably tempted to, go for a cheap resource, and that's fine for the beginning. But what you want to build is also a bit like a strategic relationship. So what I did in my business when we started outsourcing is, first of all, you have to use a professional process, not just write 3 emails or a very short description of what you want to have on these platforms. I actually took more what I did also in my corporate life, like these are like 3 pages of specific specs, right? This is what I want. And you have it in 2 parts, one like for pre-qualifying candidates, and then one, a deeper description for when you actually want to find the right person. And the other thing, what I did, we built into the hiring process almost like, this is the task. And the people we now work with, what happened? There were like 2 or 3 candidates who basically delivered the product without having even been hired. I mean, how cool is that?
Wow. Yeah.
So, while I was still, honing the task specifications, I already got back a reply, from a person on the Philippines. Hey, I completely understand what you have. Here's like a mock-up. Here's like the pilot, so to speak. And I looked at it and said, wow, you're hired. Full stop. And then you start running with it. So what I'm saying is try to build into the process where you let the person do like a little part of the work, either paid or they may even do it as part of the hiring process. Depends on how competitive that hiring market is, obviously. But that's a good thing to do. And then the second part is, while this may look a little bit more opportunistic at first, you very fast will find people who are proactive, who understand what you want to have. I can't tell you how many times I've written out, to be blunt, while the one guy already delivered what you wanted without even having been hired, the other person, by comparison, wrote you the fourth email whether he or she could have more description and, just didn't understand what the task was. So that's the one part. And then once you have that, try to think strategically about the person you're working with, not just transactionally. And that helped us a great bit because part of the outsourcers we now have are highly qualified, and they've been working for us now for, 2 years and more. And it also then gives you a little bit of responsibility because we're literally feeding the family over there. And it's completely a win-win. I could never pay such level of qualification if I paid a worker here in the West. So one may say, yeah, so you're not helping our society here. But I say, yeah, but we live on planet Earth, and I'm feeding a family and kids over there in the Philippines, and they're very grateful for it.
So it sounds to me like you've taken some skills that you maybe have acquired in the corporate world, for example, delegation and collaboration, and applied them to setting up your own business. Are there any other skills like that you've either taken from the corporate world, or perhaps are there any skills that you had to develop once you set up your own business that you maybe didn't have before?
Well, reality struck once I got an entrepreneur. And so there's that second part, very definitely, because especially, I lived in the corporate world, and while being a management partner in a consultancy, you are automatically also an entrepreneur. You have to take care of your staff, keep them busy, keep them utilized. So yes, there were skills in terms of, delegation, getting work organized, getting tasks split up so they can be done faster. That all helped. But the one thing that any entrepreneur will probably tell you that corporate life doesn't teach you, especially if you're in consulting, in consulting, you can always tell the client, look, this is what you can do. You have option A, B, C, and D, and here are all the pros and cons, and you can analyze things to death, but you're not taking the decision. And as an entrepreneur, you're faced with decision taking like every day, every minute, every hour of the day. So that's certainly a skill I had to develop and actually leave behind the comfort and the luxury of analyzing every problem. You have to develop on certain things, a certain gut feel. Having said this, I see way too many entrepreneurs and startup companies who go by gut feel, right? And this is where the rigorous corporate process helped me a great deal to apply it then also to yourself and say, wait a minute. Before you spend that money, what is going to do to your business? What's the return on it? Are you going to see it back? So I think that's where things helped a great deal.
And Alex, from reviewing, I suppose, your reports for K-Lytics and from what you were telling me there about when you were a consultant, you strike me as somebody who's quite comfortable with reviewing large amounts of data and then developing an ability to focus on what's important in large amounts of data. So do you have any maybe advice for somebody who might be struggling to focus on what's important, particularly if they're feeling overwhelmed by all the information that's coming at them, whether from a boss or from statistics about their books, for example?
Right. You raise a very important point here because in today's world, there is data and information overflow, right? People get swamped. If you are an author to stay in the industry and, you start doing your own Facebook or Amazon ads and then they give you data and you're swamped with key performance metrics that's usually not the home turf of a writer and you can get easily overwhelmed. For me, I spent 20 years, as you say, weeding through data, aggregating it. And then we always had jokingly, we said a good analysis, aggregates the data in a way that it can be understood by a child, a grandmother, or a corporate CEO. All of them react the same way if they see things that are too complex and they spending the time on figuring out what it means than taking action on it and going with it. So if you feel overwhelmed by today's information overflow, also back to the outsourcing side, you wouldn't know how many smart data people are out there in the outsourcing market. Now, there's two types of them. Ones are like just the doers who can do the number crunching for you, but you will also have people whom you can ask, well, what does this tell you? And so if you're not into numbers, try to find somebody who can help you with it. It is absolutely affordable. You have a great many engineers and programmers and controllers out there in India, Pakistan, Philippines who are highly trained and can totally help you with the analytics of your business.
That's good advice. And I suppose one last question. Do you work longer hours now that you're running your own business, or did you work longer hours when you were a management consultant?
Now, the irony is I work longer. But the big distinction is every hour I spend more, I completely feel I'm working on my own dream and not my company's, or employer's dream or client's dream. Now, working for clients was great. You really enjoyed doing projects when you felt you're part of the client organization. You're working with them as a team. And that's a great mission and a great source of satisfaction. But if you start being successful at working at your own dream, I think the one thing I'm now learning is you have to totally discipline yourself in a way and, or let your wife beat your head with a saucepan to spend more time with the family, because that's where the whole idea started. So if you ask me, well, where did I fail? I started doing this to spend more time with the family. Well, I have to be honest. I spend more work hours. However, I have the office here in the rooftop of our house. And for the last 4 years, I've seen my daughter every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I lost all my, whatever platinum cards with the airlines. And frankly, I don't want to have them back in return for, compared to what I have now. So yes, longer hours, but much more fun and way more time with the family.
I get it. And Alex, if people are interested in finding you or K-Lytics, where should they go?
Very simply, type in K-Lytics, so letter K -lytics, like in analytics.com. And that's the homepage. But if you want to get in touch with me personally, just write to support@K-Lytics.com. In the subject line, attention, Alex, it will be channeled to me. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. If you did, please leave a rating on the iTunes store. And if you want to accomplish more with your writing, please visit becomeawritertoday.com/join and I'll send you a free email course. Thanks for listening.